So today I wanted to talk about the hacked aspect of the simulation hypothesis. So if you're not familiar with the simulation hypothesis, basically that we're in a holographic system and a simulation, and basically it could be an advanced Sims game or an advanced computer simulation that's created by some kind of beings. And the only difference between our games, Nintendo and these kinds of things, is that our games, or this game that we're in, is a little bit more complicated. It's basically a holographic projection in a 3D physical kind of universes using the molecular projection system of physical matter, basically physics or quantum mechanics or whatever you want to call it. Basically saying that it's just an advanced game with emotion and 3D physicality and a bunch of layers that complicate it a little bit more than the normal games that we've seen being invented or coming on into our world in the last, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it might be. And so if you take those games that we have now from 40 years ago to what we have now and take it on, let's say 4,000 or 40,000 years, if we want to consider time to be a reality other than and not just a layer within the simulation itself, then you would come to a logical conclusion that it's very likely or possible that a computer game like Sims and SimCity and all these kinds of games would be a very advanced multiplayer system that could be possible to be what this is. And then you could look at the algorithms and the parameters, the software parameters and the programming that's been set to be maybe very complicated but still very predictable. And when you look at that from that perspective, almost everything in our existence is a dead giveaway that this is very likely the case. Now we are actually software programs, and there might be with the string theory and stuff like that, we would actually be looking at multiple games that are running. And it could also be considered that these games, some of these games, have been abandoned, so that once they are the creators of a scale that could create these kinds of games, has left their game running. And basically the parameters seem very wide compared to the games that we have for these multiplayer games that the children these days are playing so intensely. But if you have a more complicated set of algorithms, including all these different parameters and possibilities and outcomes, then you would get a string theory type of situation where a game gets started and ends up in one direction, another game of the same type with the same parameters can end up somewhere else. So you'd have this multiverse type of theory or version of reality where there could be parallel dimensions or parallel string realities of different types of games, but also of the same game. So once you initiate a game, one game, let's call it Earth 1.0 or whatever you want to call it, right? Earth game. Once you tap into the Earth game, somebody might set in action, in motion, this game with the parameters that are there, very ample parameters, but still very limited parameters at another level. And somebody else might set one, and you'd have multiple versions of that same game, but with considering the different outcomes within the parameters of the allowed directions in which things can go, it's multiverse. It could be, everything could be just slightly different. In one other dimension, I could just be here, okay, and over here, or I might never have made this video, and you could go far and all these things, right? So let's leave that alone for a second. I did write a couple of things down so that I wanted to speak about, so it might be a little bit long video, but the thing I was trying to explain to somebody today was, let's try to sum up what this thing then actually is. Basically, this person is quite, troubled in many ways, and I was saying, well, from what I can and have researched through all the different religions and texts and scriptures and philosophies of all the different cultures that we have had at least some access to, because most of it's been hidden, then it seems that we are in this kind of simulation, and that the simulation is not only a simulation that was originally intent on having certain algorithms, but it seems this simulation also has been hacked. And so I was giving this example about these 5 levels. Basically, you could say that you have 5 levels. The first level is spirit or source. The second level is a fragmented piece of that spirit or source. Let's call it individuated spirit. So you have spirit and individuated spirit. So this individuated level of spirit is a tiny little crumb from the entire spirit that has like a cell in a body, and that's what we could be considered to be at our base. We could call that consciousness or awareness, essence or whatever, right? But let's just keep it to these words for now. Spirit is the original one, the source, the everything, the one that, or the nothing, out of which everything comes. And the potential, the absolute quantum potentiality of all, which is nothing, because it hasn't been shaped yet or created yet, because it still has every potential in pure potentiality. Then from there, this thing is like an organism. You could see the entire thing, and it's made out of different cells. It's a level down. And this is where we are at our source level, spirit, individuated spirit. Then you have a third level, which is a level of another layer, and therefore another density, and a lower level therefore as well, which would be the soul. And that soul level is the plan. It's the plan that this fracture, this piece of spirit, this individuated spirit, has got for entering the game. And then from the soul level, which is the plan, the blueprint, the idea for the life, which is multiple lives into multiple games, maybe the same kind of game, maybe different kind of games, in which this soul plan wants to incarnate or download itself so that it can get what we would call a mind and a body. And that will be the avatar. So the mind-body system is what's sitting here. This mind-body was Roald, right? It's been given a name. It doesn't mean anything. I'm not going to go into that right now. But this body-mind here, sitting here, is an avatar that has been inhabited by a soul plan, or let's say by a individuated spirit fracture of the one source. And that individuated fracture of light being has created its blueprint through a soul plan, and is trying to implement that soul plan for this learning experience in this game called Earth 2018, whatever, right? And so we got these levels. And from the simulation perspective, it's important to see that this was probably once an organic system, in that the spirit is the one, there's no change there, and that is always intact, and there's nothing wrong with that ever. And that's the part which says that nothing matters, all is well, there's nothing that's gone wrong anywhere, because the universe or God or whatever you want to call it doesn't make any mistakes. That's at this level. But the moment you look at the individual cells, the individuated spirit cells, these are these fracture and go in different directions, and there's different types of cells that have gone very far away from source, which we call demons or lost souls or lost angels or whatever you want to call them, right? And there's others that are still relatively close. And I think that the Earth system used to be quite a good system, a good game, a good Nintendo game. Earth 1.0, whatever you want to call it, that simulation game, whoever wrote it, it was originally meant with a certain kind of peace. Nature exhibits peace and harmony. There is bliss, there's joy, there's a certain correctness, there's a certain rightness, there's a sort of bliss, joy, happiness, goodness, love probably embodies that sense. The love embodies those bliss, goodness, rightness, true capacity to have empathy and compassion. That's what the Earth would represent as the organic system. So when people originally, or fractures of spirit, would originally enter this game, you'd enter with a soul plan that would go through several lifetimes, maybe 100, maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000,000 lifetimes, whatever you design for it. I mean, it depends on how many coins you threw in the slot machine, basically. And you go in for this game, and you went in and you think that, well, that's life on Earth, and I'm going in for a learning process to learn empathy and compassion and all these things. And it seems to be the case that at some point in this game, there's other kinds of games, there's like Doom games and World of Warcraft and all this stuff. I think on Earth, essentially that wasn't the original plan, but there's been an overlay or a seeping in of different types of energy fields, different types of light beings that were further away from the source. This is what we would call, all the rapists and the pedophiles and the criminals and the narcissists and the psychopaths, and basically almost everybody that rules our planet right now when it comes to government and all these big organizations. Of course, there's exceptions. There's some good elements still into this game. But generally speaking, we have been infiltrated to a level or poisoned by these, what you could call parasites or lower levels of beings, demons and interdimensional beings, or whatever you want to call them, right? Satan and all these things are descriptions to try to depict the good and the bad. And of course, to a large degree, that's now the software that's infiltrated the original organic software. So the original software was maybe with compassion and love and truth, but now we have an infection or a parasitic entity or an interdimensional infection, which might have been caused within the game. At some point, somebody tried to interfere, you know what they say in Atlantis and these kinds of things, where they played with certain technology that caused interdimensional rifts. So we had tears and leakages from different dimensions, and that gave the opportunity for other dimensional beings from states that are lower level states to penetrate this reality that we're in here, or this game that we're in here, the Earth game, right? And so we had this corruptive, parasitic level of entry of energy fields that entered. Now, the question is, where did these enter? Like, for example, you can't enter at the level spirit, that's source. That's untouched, it never goes bad, it doesn't rot, it's no shape, there's nothing wrong with any of that. At the level of spirit, individuated spirit, you can't really be contaminated either. However, this game seems to be a game in which, I mean, you can listen to videos as well from Tom Campbell. He also speaks about this. I think he has books as well. I've never read of any, but I watched a few videos of him once, and he also writes about this and speaks about this. And the idea is that basically this game, every time you die in this game, your soul level is rewritten. So basically the two unstable levels of this system, the lower levels, the less important, the negligible, unimportant levels are the body-mind. So when the body-mind has lived out a life, whether it dies young or old, it synthesizes, all its experiences are synthesized at the soul level. And at the soul level, this new design for a new life begins, and you can have a new reincarnation by entering the game again, like game over, start over again. You enter the game again, and at that level, it's synthesized, like it's distilled. It's distilled down, and the basic lessons learned from that life are encapsulated and added to the soul design, and then from there, the individualized spirit designs a new life. Then it gets born into a new body again, with a mind body, the body mind. I have them two because this should be mind and then body. And then you have this body mind, so the new baby gets born with a certain design for the life, a certain soul plan, which has soul contracts and interrelated contracts with different types of these fractured beings like spirit, which, like your parents, whatever you want to call them, of course not at the level of your parents and your friends and your spouses or husbands or wives or whatever, all the people you have soul contracts with, because at the level of here they were called that, your parents and your whatever, but of course they are individuated spirit as well. So you make these contracts and you make this soul plan and you make these soul contracts and you incarnate again into this game. And in this game you go about learning these lessons. And you learn these lessons to evolve in the positive sense, but you can also have setbacks if you really fuck up, And a lot of people nowadays are fucking up, but it's not because necessarily that they're fucking up by design, but what it seems to be the case, and that's why I call this thing, what did I say, the hacked simulation hypothesis, right? The simulation hypothesis, well, I'm saying it's hacked. So I think that Tom Campbell and some other people leave out an aspect where you could say, well, to what degree are we contaminated? Are we hacked by other games or other simulations or other beings that were originally not designed for this game? And in that sense, we are in a kind of like a projected simulation holographic dome. Some people would call that the flat earth type of dome. At least the model of the flat earthers would be a good model to say, well, you're in this projection system and you can't get to the ice caps or out to the outer rings, because that's where this lens is. And then from outside, these holographic projection of the sun, probably the sun is the informational stream and projection of molecular holographic particles. What do you call that in the past? The bio-photonics, bio-photonic essence, that projects our biophotonic essence into here. And these biophotons, or this holographic photonic electronic molecular projection device, is projected into what we call here this physical universe, right? This physical world. So we're not probably allowed to go very far out, because then the entire holographic thing collapses because you're coming too close to the lens. And there's only a certain focal point by which it can be projecting into the system. And at that focal point, we can have this physical universe be coherent and hold together, right? So basically, this system was designed in such a way that it would have certain lessons. However, it seems to be the case, and that's why I call it the hacked simulation hypothesis, is it seems that somewhere these beings, by some interlocking or leaking or dimensional rifting, certain systems that they were broken, that other beings of lower level or other games were allowed or could enter into our system. So it's like a leakage. And you could compare it to a bucket of water. Let's say you take a bucket of clean seawater. That was our original design for Earth. Let's say an organic, beautiful, harmonic Earth. And you enter into that bucket, you put into that bucket a balloon filled with Coca Cola. Well, if you have done any research on food or anything, you know Coca Cola is basically poison. And you put a balloon with Coca Cola into the water. And these are kinds of like two different dimensions. And there's only one little balloon skin keeping the Coca Cola separated from the water. And some experiments seem to have been going on, and similar to what they're doing at CERN, probably, and they're probably doing all kinds of experiments, but CERN seems to be one of them. And with these experiments, they basically ruptured the layers between the dimensions. So the balloon was punctured. And when you puncture the balloon with the Coca-Cola in the bucket of seawater, you get a mix. And it seems that we now have no longer an organic system, which was designed as a game to enter and live those several hundred or thousands of lives, learning as a biophotonic spirit essence particle, an individualized spirit and a particle, the lessons that you came to learn in this game as an eternal being. And now that these other dimensions have been opened, we have a contamination of psychotic, psychopathic, narcissistic pedophiles and criminals. And we have an almost contaminated system to the level that we don't even know where. Because what I'm asking and wondering is where the contamination takes place. So you have spirit, source, it can be contaminated. Then you have the individualized spirit particle. I don't think that can be contaminated either. And then that spirit sets about to design its soul level design for the game into these avatar systems below with the mind body. Now, was the contamination here or was the contamination here? Because if the contamination is here, we have a situation where the design each time you die and reincarnate, the design for your life is the blueprint for that life to learn the lessons is perfect. But then once you get into the body-mind circuit and you get downloaded into this, to the game, you're into the avatar world, and your soul plan gets downloaded into this baby body type of system of holographic simulation, sim type of life, this thing here with the body-mind. But if the contamination is from that part down, you never get to live out your soul purpose and your soul contracts. You're constantly contaminated with these entities that are living off the system. And that's because all these other entities, including demons and interdimensional beings and all kinds of lost souls and whatever you want to call them, right, also have a soul plan, but they have been drifted so far from source that maybe the Earth is pretty close. This holographic game called Earth is very close to source, but there's other beings, these little individuated particles of source, that split off and have gone so far away from source that they are what we would call demons or very lost beings, And these beings now suddenly found this really nice and rich environment of Earth simulation, this holographic dome platform, and they were like, wow, we could feed on the energy we haven't known for decades or millennia or whatever you want to call it if you take time into the equation. And so they've penetrated and slipped through these crevices of interdimensional rifts, entered into this realm, and can feed on the system because they haven't had this kind of nutrients and feed off of goodness and the energy fields that are here. But the way they do that is to basically hack the system to the point where if you get, let's say these lost beings are very low in their energy field. They haven't had the sustenance of love or joy or any of that stuff that we still have at the organic level of the design of this matrix system called Earth Game, whatever, right? Simulation hologram. They haven't been around with that. So they're coming in, and what they do is they create with what they're best at, that demon level of suffering and pain and torture and pedophilia and abuse and all these kinds of things, and criminality and psychopathy and narcissism and all these things, right? These is their nature. They have evolved as source particles as well. I mean, there are our brothers and sisters, if you wish to say that way, right? But they've gone so far away that they have lost that the capacity for empathy, love, and all those things. And yet that would be much more healthy for them. That's why they love feeding off the system. But what they use to implement a takeover of the system, the viral infection, the takeover of the system, the parasitic infection that they represent in our system, is they interject and seep into this dimension. And from their empathetic or their dark energies, they implement their kind of stuff that they're good at, which is pedophilia and narcissism and all this psychopathy, criminal behavior, corruption and all the things they're good at. And the idea of that is like the bear that they put these things in from Chinese medicine. I think they have these bears locked up in a cage, and there's a little tube going into, I think, their kidney or something like that. And they tap off some kind of kidney fluid, spinal fluid, whatever the hell it is, right? I think it's some kind of kidney fluid. And they use that for Chinese medicine. Now we are the same. They've tapped into the interdimensional level of our system, of our holographic projection system. And if they can put the Sims on a trajectory of pain, suffering, and confusion, then when the attention of these beings from the organic system of Earth is diverted to something that's not really in their design, all the complications of life and money and the corruption of the schooling system, which is indoctrination, and the medical world that's poisoning most people, and most medicine is not medicine at all, the pharmaceuticals, and then you've got the whole political bullshit story, Santa Claus nonsense, and with presidents and all this nonsense, and the wars that are going on, and the people that are being killed, and at every level we're corrupted. Then that puts the attention on the people of this organic system on something that they're really not supposed to have been focused on, because their soul contract, their soul plan, their soul design, the blueprint that they've made for this game, whether that's 200 lives or 2,000 lives or whatever, wasn't planned to be part of that. So the contamination puts them with their attention on negativity, and once they're involved in negativity, basically their source energy, which is much higher than those of the demons and interdimensional beings, is left untapped. And then that's siphoned off by the demons, by the interdimensional entities that really are not from this game, or organically or naturally or by design. And of course you could say, well, games apparently are allowed to interact, because sometimes these games are melted together like they have been melting together in our system. So it's also okay. At the original level of source or spirit, we're untouched anyway, and probably at this level as well. So that's a possibility, that the interdimensional beings or the leakages of other lower levels of existence, or whatever you want to call it, dimensions, have as interjected here. However, that does pose a certain logic that basically we are then trapped. So let's say you came in for 200 lifetimes to learn through the Earth game certain things as a bio-photonic spirit essence being at the individual level, so that you could evolve at certain things and just experience all these things. Otherwise, you'd just be bored as an eternal spark, right? But now you're stuck in here probably for thousands of lives, because the interdimensional being type of dark demon energy sources, they don't want anybody to ever return, because this is a feeding ground for them. So once you've lived your 200 lives, which you would leave the system, but they don't like that, because this is for them a feeding ground. So what they do is they make sure that this corrupt confusion never allows you to live out the soul design, the soul plan that you have. So every time you have lived a life in confusion, doing the best with what you can, frustrated about that you came into this earth believing that you were going to do great things and this and that, and by the time most people are at a certain age, They haven't even come close to living the dream and all the things that they felt they were going to do. That's because their soul plan, their soul blueprint has been interjected with this contamination field of the demonic realm, which is negativity and narcissistic and psychopathy, whatever. And then you die. And when the system works like this, like these are eternal, if you could say, or at least this one is eternal, this one is eternal, this one is a plan, which is at a higher level and a longer inter-life system, so it's a multiple life system. But these are they wipe at each life. Each life, the avatar, the mind body of the avatar is wiped. So these two are taken out because they're irrelevant and they're trivial. You know, all these stories and all these things and emotions and all the, oh, my mother this, my father that, and all the rubbish that people get up to at this lost system that we're in now is totally trivial and it gets wiped. That was organically planned that way as well. I mean, by nature, that was supposed to be the case. Otherwise, you would die and you would still remember who you were last life. And if my wife didn't die, but I would die, and I'd come back 10 years from now, or I would come back and reincarnate, and now I'm a 10-year-old boy, let's say again, and I see my wife, and I'm like, hey, you know, hey, I would like to sleep with you, you know, because you're my wife. I'm like, and she's like, well, you know, you're a 10-year-old boy, you know, it's called Sam, grown up in another country, but I still remember that. So it doesn't work, right? So they wipe the system, and that was organically planned that way. But the blueprint, if it was organically lived without contamination, you would run into your soulmates and your deals and your things much easier without the contamination. So this interjection of this demonic realm, the influence of negativity of demons, let's say, is a contaminant in our system, a parasitic system. And I hope it's at this level. Because some philosophies and some quantum mechanics and quantum physics and all of these religions even that go back for the cultures that we've had on Earth seem to suggest it might be at this level. So that when you die, your essence and this distillation process of the learned lessons that you got from that life is contaminated as well. So that when you're designing your new life for the next round, for the next incarnation, you are already contaminated in the designing process as well. So the distillation process of death is contaminated. So these people that have afterlife experiences, all these things, they see Jesus, they see God, they see whatever they all see, might all be false layovers from this demonic realm that is also trying to cause confusion there. So that when you want to design your new life to go back into the game, you're so confused by all of the contamination, even at that level, that you design a screwed up blueprint for the next life to begin with. That means you'll never get out in 200 lives. You might stay in here for 2 million lives. And this is what we're stuck in. We could be, if this is right and the hypothesis, the way I presented here is right, we're looking at being trapped in a prison type of holographic game in which there is an artificial intelligence or a demon type of dimensional level of intelligence that has entered the game and wants to keep us in the game for its own benefit of being able to feed off of the remaining energy, both bio-photonic spirit energy that's left when the negativity is focused on in the life, the confusion is injected, and therefore they can feed off of the excess energy left untapped by the original design from the organic system. And that would suggest that there's something wrong at a certain level of being parasitically fed on by these beings, which means when you die and the avatar dies, the body-mind dies, and the bio-photonic spirit, individuated bio-photonic spirit part that you truly are, your essence, your light being, returns to the level above it, the layer above it, because this is a stacked layer system, and to return or to design its own life or its next life and to distill the process and simulate this thing, it's being contaminated as well in order for this demonic realm to continue feeding off the system, which means you don't get to waste a life. You don't get to waste this life because by the time your body, mind dies in this holographic game system, you don't really get to go back and design the proper life to really evolve again. So you might be stuck for millions of years, which means you only have one life to get out. You only have one life to get out because if you don't get out before the the avatar dies, then you're wiped and manipulated, and your design is affected or contaminated, and then your next blueprint for your next life won't work, and therefore you will get stuck in this ARC type of system that you have on Netflix. It's called ARC or something like that, but at this level that I'm speaking about, not just some physical level, but a real ARC type of holographic level. And that's really the idea. And then another thing I wanted to say about this is that you also have what we would call, I think my children called it NPCs, right? I think I wrote it down. NPCs, non-playing characters. And we tend to talk to everybody, but I'm telling you, most people in this holographic simulation system, and I'm not sure what the amount is, but I think a large amount, the majority for that matter of fact, are NPCs, which they call non-playing characters. So basically in these games that the children play, they have these multiplayer games, and they are talking to their friends on the microphone through the computer system, which is a copy of what we're in as the simulation. And then there's these characters that can't do anything other than what they're programmed to do. So they might walk up to them and say, hey, where can I go to do this and that? And this character just turns around, hey, have a good day. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? It's a good day. And then you go to them, hey, look, I'm looking for a gold stack that I'm trying to find. And they're like, hi, welcome, it's a good day. And they basically have like 5 sentences, and they repeat that over and over because they're a non-playing character. Well, I run into most people on this planet, and I would call them definitely a non-playing character, because they're unable to learn. They don't have free will. They're really not players. They're really not at this level. They are a filler that is not even at the avatar level. They're just a filler within this layer of the holographic system down here in the dome level thing, right? So we often try to explain, sometimes even to friends and family, what you're dealing with and why they won't wake up or evolve. But technically you're speaking to an NPC, a non-playing character. And I actually call it an NSC instead of an NPC because it's a non-sentient character. It's actually a character that has a set of parameters that basically are their the data stream that they have. Oh, I have another word for it. What is it? They basically have the algorithms, right? So the scripted algorithms that they have are set, and as complex as you might think they are, that they seem like humans, they seem like people, they seem like actual participants and with free will like yourself, but they're not. Most cases, these are non-playing characters or non-sentient characters. They're not spark beings from this level or from source sparked into the individuated spirit, and then with a blueprint for the soul level into the avatar bodies. They're literally not even avatar bodies. Although they would look like that and you could operate them and they would have blood like this body has and all these things, technically they're non-playing characters, they're non-sentient characters. So that also shows you the capacity that the programming is not capable of diverting much further than it's able to divert from. Because the parameters and the algorithms which set its capacity and its ways of acting out alive are limited to those parameters. They can't assimilate, learn, evolve because they are a non-playing character. The parameters define their capacities. And at a certain level, that is the very point that proves this is a simulation. Not even considering the fact that the people that do have these spark, original source spark, this still is proven to be a simulation because the parameters are set. You know, a baby gets born around 9 months. It gets teeth around so many this. It starts walking around so many months. It starts puberty at so many months. You know, this counts for the animals, the seasons, the flowers, the trees. It's a program. It's a software algorithm program. It's a sure thing. I mean, you look at even there was an interview a while ago with Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, right? And I mean, Elon Musk obviously got the picture pretty good. You know, Joe Rogan still wants to hold on to the idea that he's not in holographic simulation, right? And as brilliant as Joe Rogan can be, you know, he does want to believe that his sim game that he's playing out here is not just a useless game that was designed by somebody who's left running in multiple verses and multiple universes, multiple dimensions in his string theory type of stuff where there's lots of Joe Rogans because that's just a set of parameters that create a Joe Rogan type of figurine, like this Roald figurine. But if you really look at the data and you look at the probability of what I'm talking about, it's very likely that we're living in such a system. And so yes, it means we're Sims. We are in that sense just algorithms running. And although our spirit essence might be the fuel, the lithium-ion battery type of fuel that these systems need, this is what embodies the system, that's what fuels the system. I mean, the bio-photonic spirit energy is what fuels the capacity for this stuff to work. And of course you could say the sun projects the entire holographic thing into the dome through the lens and creates this, whatever you want to call it, right? These are just analogies or examples and that depict the idea of the principles that I'm speaking of, because I'm not speaking of really physical things, I'm speaking about the metaphysical principles that dictate our system. And at that level, it's a very likely scenario that this kind of model is the actual model that we're living in. I don't know if I have anything else, but I think that's pretty much it that I wanted to speak about. But summed up, once more again, it looks like we're living in a simulation and it's been hacked. And if you don't get out of that hack or that system now, you might be stuck for I don't know how many more cycles, because the hackers, the parasitic hackers that have hacked the system, I think are trying to keep all the players, which are the original beings, inside. So the spirit photonic beings, the individuated spirit beings, they're trying to keep them cycling over and over and over. They've overtaken the system. And so unless you get out this lifetime, you might get born next life and get less of a chance to wake up and get out of the system. And well, that would be a life wasted, because right now you're watching this video, and if this resonates with you at all, I suggest the imperative is to get out. And all the skydiving trips and all the nonsense and birthday parties and all the crap that keeps us distracted from finding our true source, getting back to individuated source and getting out of this game back into source altogether, I think that's what most of these things are designed for. So next time you're going to waste a few more hours watching stupid movies or whatever, just keep in mind that this life, whether you die at 15, 30 or 105 years old, once these avatar is lost, the memory is wiped, and if it's contaminated at this level, you're wiped completely, contaminated, and the design is contaminated, the distillation process is contaminated, and then you're recycled into a new avatar of confusion in the confusing world of criminality, narcissism, psychopathy, you know, and whatever you want to call this, the destruction of our environment, our politics, our pedophily, the money, the false money creation system of fractional reserve bullshit, the pharmaceutical bullshit, the indoctrinational schooling system, which has nothing to do with anything, and you name all the levels of corruption. So if you want to go for another cycle, and hope that you are going to get born to in an avatar that has avatar mother and father that are smart, intelligent, wise, and know what they're talking about, you think that you're going to take that chance again and hope that your parents and your teachers and your fellows and your peers and all the people around you are going to wake you up? Well, I don't see a lot of people around us that woke up. I don't see a lot of people that have a clue about jack shit. So I suggest this life is the life. This time around, you need to get out before you're going to be reincarnated into new avatar, into this contaminated, demonically contaminated world or game called Earth simulation. All right, see you guys later. Oh, and for those who think I am totally crazy, insane, and nuts, I got news for you. You're probably an NPC. Bummer.